Stop what you're doing and watch this, because this list won the last Modern Challenge. Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. This is MahfuzVanGogh, your Dredge guy, and today we have a challenge winner. Yeah, this list won recently a Modern Challenge. Let's do a quick analysis on it, and let's jump into the action. I will play a Modern League with this list for the first time right now. But let's do a quick analysis and understanding about what this list plays differently from other lists that we already saw here on this channel, or maybe other lists that you were playing in your local metagame. So the numbers are pretty similar if you compare every Dredge list in Modern recently. Usually they will work with 18 lands and 12 enablers, or sometimes 11, sometimes 13, but something around 12. 11 or 12 dredgers. This list plays only 12. 11 or 12 threats that can come back from the graveyard freely. This list plays only 11 because it has only 3 copies of Narcomoeba, which is interesting. Let's talk about a little bit. Let's talk about it. And another effects, 4 copies of Creeping Chill, 1 Wonder in the main deck, and 2 copies of Ox and 1 Conflagrate. Recently, we are trying to build here a 4-color. We are trying to build here a 4-color build with some updates. But this list looks really similar to older Dredge lists from some months ago before Modern Horizons 3. What this list adds to the deck is Cephalid Coliseum. Cephalid Coliseum is a great card. Legacy players already know that, right? And since this card was printed in Modern Horizons 3, you cannot play, of course you can play Dredge in Modern without Cephalid Coliseum, but it is probably a mistake. This card is bonkers. It is that good. What this list tries to do, to include Wonder in the main deck, is having a heavily island mana base. So you have 4 copies of Steam Vents, 1 Thundering Falls, and a total of 8 fetch lands. So you can grab your island quickly. This gives you 13 lands that can produce an island on your side of the battlefield, plus 4 copies of Cephalid Coliseum, which need blue mana, of course, and 1 copy of Blood Crypt. This Blood Crypt is one of my questions in this list specifically, because this Blood Crypt, of course, wants to give you access to Dark Blast. So this list plays 3 copies of Dark Blast. This card is especially good position right now, because all of the energy decks with X1 creatures, so you can kill Ocelot Pride or Ragavan on turn 1, for example. But since you have only 1 Blood Crypt and 8 fetch lands, this gives you 9 cards in your deck that can give you a black mana on turn 1. So sometimes you will not have access to black mana. You have a Dark Blast on your starting hand, and you don't have black mana. But besides that, I think the mana base is doing its job. It is basically an EvoD deck and not a Grixis, because only 1 mana can produce black, right? So this is mostly a red-blue deck. And I think this will be really comfortable to play, because you don't need to go after green mana or white mana or even black mana if you don't have a Blood Crypt, if you don't need a Blood Crypt in your starting hand. So this is almost a 2-color build besides this card. Well, having access to Blood Crypt, of course, if you have it in your starting hand, you can even cast some dredgers from your hand. You can even cast a Press Amalgam or a Silversmote Ghouls, but I don't think this will happen frequently. Most of the time you are just playing blue and red with this list. Well, what else? Since you mostly play with blue and red, you can have 8 turn 1 enablers, blue turn 1 enablers in Tomscour and Otherworldly Gaze, and the best turn 2 enabler in the format for Dredge, Cathartic Reunion, of course. But since you are heavily red, you can also play 2 copies of Ox and 1 copy of Conflagrate. So not that many changes besides the mana base and the inclusion of a single Blood Crypt, a single black mana in your mana base. Let's talk a little bit about the sideboard. The sideboard includes 3 copies of Damping Sphere. This card is a possible inclusion against Storm decks, or maybe even Eldrazi or ramp decks that have more lands like Eldrazi Temple and Ugin's Labyrinth, for example, but I believe this is probably stronger against Storm. Silent Gravestone is an interesting inclusion. I recently included this in my Legacy decks, and it is super good, super cool to see here in Modern too, because this just stops alone almost every single graveyard hate that can see playing Modern, like artifacts that can be tapped to target your cards in your graveyard, but also Kozilek's Return. Kozilek's Command. Kozilek's Command is a card that sees play in Eldrazi decks, 4 copies in the main deck, and this card can stop Kozilek's Command beautifully. Also unlicensed Hearse, and Ghost Vacuum, and other cards that can target Fairy Macabre, for example, and other cards, Surgical Extraction, of course. So this is a interesting card to have in your sideboard. It is especially good in this list because this is almost 2-color Dredge list, so it doesn't have Life from the Loam, for example. This would be a Nombo in a Life from the Loam list, because Life from the Loam targets your cards in the graveyard, and this card would stop you from casting Life from the Loam. So in this list, this is not a problem. A Line of Sanctity will stop some of your opponent's graveyard hate, like Nihil Spellbomb or Endurance, for example, but also discard spells and maybe can be added against other problematic decks like Burn, or maybe heavily discard spells, black decks that can target you, like Boggart Bog or Boggart Troller. Conflagrate, 2 extra copies of Conflagrate against creature decks, and 2 Echoing Truth. This card is interesting because I prefer Into the Flood Maw instead of Echoing Truth because of it's cheaper. It costs 1 less mana. But Echoing Truth is interesting if you want to bounce a lot of permanents that have the same name. And it could also be useful if your opponent has something like Chalice of the Void on 1. I'm not seeing that many Chalices in this format, but maybe Echoing Truth can prove itself. I'm skeptical, but let's see how this card will perform today. Oh, another thing about the main deck. This main deck plays Silversmote Ghouls. In my recent videos here on YouTube, you saw that I'm preferring to use Bloodghast, but it's because I am building a Life from the Loam list. So you almost every time will have extra lands in your hand, so you can grab your Bloodghast with haste easily. But this is most of the time will be an all-in Dredge deck. So you play with the cards you have in your starting hand. You don't have many draw spells. You have some selection spells in Otherworldly Gaze, but you don't have ways to recur Cephalid Coliseum. So I bet this list will mulligan more aggressively than others to have a fast starting hand that can look for Dredgers since the turn 1 and probably crack Cephalid Coliseum on turn 2 or cast Cathartic Reunion on turn 2. If your starting hand will not have access to both of those plans, maybe your starting hand is not that great. Wonder in the main deck, of course, is a nod to the creature decks that we see more and more in the modern metagame. And I think I covered all the bases about this deck building. Let's check how this will perform in today's Legacy League. Let's go right now. Oh, and of course, click the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below if you're here for the first time. Say hello, say how you discovered this video. If you were looking for a Dredge video like this one, or if you're just curious to see a great winner deck in action. Let's jump into the action. Renting cards is the best way to play online, and you can start your journey, like me, on Mana Traders. Just use this coupon code that you can see here on this page to have an exclusive discount on your first 2 months. Now let's go back to the games. Round 1, we are paired against the Redman, and we are on the play. I believe I played against this player before. Their name is not unknown, not sure. Well, it's a Giganta deck. And yeah, this hand is what I was talking about at the intro, with one exception. This hand has no second blue mana, so we cannot crack Cephalid Coliseum. But we have black mana, so if we get access to black removal spells on game 1, since this is a Giganta deck, it seems important. And maybe Otherworldly Gaze will find us a 3rd land. So this is a keep. We have 2 Dredgers to discard to Cathartic Reunion, so I will probably start with Otherworldly Gaze trying to hit another land on the 2nd turn. My opponent had a mulligan to 6. So we start with Cephalid Coliseum. Of course, this is a Giganta deck. We will probably resolve Otherworldly Gaze, but let's pass a turn here. Let's cultivate good habits, because Force of Negation is a reality in the format. And my opponent probably doesn't have Force of Negation, but either way, let's cultivate good habits and cast Otherworldly Gaze here. Of course, I could have a Silversmote Ghoul and Creeping Chill, so this is probably just wrong. But it happened to me only once after several matches playing with Creeping Chill and Silversmote Ghoul. And my opponent played a Flooded Strand and passed the turn. Interesting. So we will draw our second land. It's a tapped land, unfortunately. So the mana base is giving me chills here. Unfortunately, we cannot do everything in the same turn. We will not crack Cephalid Coliseum on turn 2, but on turn 3, I mean, because this land will enter the battlefield. We enter the battlefield tapped. But it is what it is. Let's cast Cathartic Reunion, discarding 2 dredgers. Okay, it resolves. So we'll dredge 5, dredge 4. I'll have Creeping Chill, and we have dredge 4. We have ghouls and amalgams. So next time we have many creatures in play because Creeping Chill will trigger ghouls, and ghouls, one ghoul actually, will trigger our amalgams. So that's fine. We pass the turn here, and because of the mana base, it's this way. We will not have the access to Ox of Agonas next turn, or to Conflagrate, or to Cephalid Coliseum, unfortunately. But our turn 4 will be bonkers. But we have black mana, so that's a good way to... Okay, against a Ajani, for example. Now we'll have more creatures entering the battlefield. We have only one dredger there. It's dredge 4. Okay, now we have Wander, but we don't have islands yet. But I have an island in my hand, so Wander is amazing against creature decks. What you're doing here? I think I will play Thundering Falls, so we can fly above Ajani and the cat. And after that, it doesn't matter too much, right? So I can do this now. Okay, we don't want this Liquid Imp. And we can cast Tom Scour before or after attacking. It will not make a difference. And my opponent concedes. Well, yeah, we had a great hand even with that that question that I told you about the mana base. Now what? Against this deck, we probably want 2 copies of Conflagrate, and that's it. Echo in Truth maybe looks interesting because you can play this against 4, 5, 6, 7 cat tokens at the same time. But I'm not sure I want to include a bounce spell against this deck. I prefer removal spells. So we already have Dark Blast, and now we'll have 3 copies of Conflagrate. What to take from our deck? We already have only 11 dredgers, so I'm not feeling comfortable about taking 1 extra dredger from the deck. So maybe we can take 1 ghoul, since this card enters the battlefield tapped, so it's not the best. I do like Ox because my opponent maybe has Blood Moon, so I will not side out any of my red spells. Probably Tom Scour is one of the weakest cards of this deck. So yeah, let's submit back. Okay, no lands, no keep. We have a Dark Blast, but unfortunately no lands. Okay, this hand looks really good. This hand is the real deal. We can put 1 land or Otherworldly Gaze. I think 1 Otherworldly Gaze we can put. Let's prioritize our mana base. Our opponent also kept 6 cards. My opponent starts with a Marsh Flats, Grixis, or a Sacred Foundry. And Ocelot's Pride, we can kill that on turn 1. Oh, that's one more thing to be told about Dark Blast in this deck here. We will definitely grab our single Blood Crypt, but since we have only 1 black mana in this list, we will never have the opportunity to cast Dark Blast twice in the same turn to kill a 1/2 creature, for example, like Guide of Souls. So we cannot cast Dark Blast on our upkeep and then dredge Dark Blast back and cast it again to kill a 1/2 creature, for example. We only have the opportunity to destroy 1/1 creatures or 0/1 creatures or 2/1 creatures. But it worked against Ocelot Pride, so that's great. My opponent plays Arid Mesa, Grixis for a basic plains, Ajani. Now it's interesting because I don't want to kill... I want to kill Ajani, but I cannot kill it with Dark Blast. Of course, we can kill the Cat Warrior token at my opponent's end step to flip Ajani when we have a creature, and then we can kill Ajani maybe. But I think this turn is just a Cathartic Reunion, discarding Dark Blast and Wander. My opponent is waiting a little bit here. Maybe they have something? No. So we drain 3, and now we play Steam Vents, untapped, and let's cast a Cathartic Reunion, discarding Wander and Dark Blast. And we'll dredge 3, and that's it. So not great hits here. My opponent is down to 10. We have Dark Blast in our hand, but only 1 Arcomoiba in play, and no other dredgers there. But we have Otherworldly Gaze next turn, so maybe we can hit something. Let's see if my opponent will attack here or not. They will. I will not block the Cat Warrior token. I tried something similar recently, and it didn't pay off. So my opponent is holding 2 mana, and this is really scary because my opponent's deck plays Raven Charm. But we don't have a choice here. I must try Otherworldly Gaze. Okay, those are good hits. We don't need a second Dark Blast. We have 1 in our hand, so this is in our graveyard. Everything is in our graveyard, right? And if my opponent has a Trapping Charm, they will probably use it this turn. So Golgari Thug can come back. Okay, another Narcomoeba. It enters the battlefield. Let's keep Narcomoeba on defense. Since we have a Dark Blast here, we can even kill Ajani if my opponent attacks next turn. Let's play Thundering Falls. Creeping Chill will go to our graveyard. My opponent is down to 7. Maybe we should attack with a single Narcomoeba, since my opponent doesn't have lifelink now. Yeah, let's attack with Narcomoeba here. And we have Conflagrate. Next turn we have Lethal. We have a Conflagrate and 2 Narcomoebas. This is already lethal. My opponent needs something better than that. Oh, they will attack here. Since we have Lethal, I will not block. We are on a healthy 21 life. So my plan about killing Ajani in combat is not a thing that I want to. Oh, my opponent has the 1 ring maybe? Yeah, they do. Okay, so we cannot win next turn yet. My opponent taps the 1 ring for mana. If we had access to Cephalid Coliseum here, like I have on low-end builds, I could grab a Cephalid Coliseum to kill my opponent with a Creeping Chill on their turn. But now the only similar thing we can do here is casting Otherworldly Gaze twice on my opponent's turn. Conflagrate is a sorcery. Because my opponent is virtually on 3 life. We only need a single Creeping Chill. And we have 1 Creeping Chill in our deck, so maybe we are lucky enough to do that. I will kill the cat token now, because we can kill Ajani. If my opponent flips Ajani, we can kill Ajani. We cannot deal damage to my opponent, but we can deal damage to Ajani. And my opponent flips it. Alright. And now we will. Do I dredge 5 here? I think I still dredge 5 here. Okay, we have double Conflagrate now. So let's attack Ajani. Those Conflagrates are kind of expendable now. We'll use 1. We have 3 Conflagrates in our graveyard, so it's okay to use only 1 here. Done. I'll keep 1 blue mana open. Discarding a Stink with Imp. Ajani is down. And now we pass the turn. My opponent loses 1 life and draws. Now let's cast Otherworldly Gaze in response. Okay, no Creeping Chills. And I don't think we need to keep Stink with Imp or Dark Blast. Do I keep Thumb's Cower? If my opponent manages to find Trapping Charm this turn, I will lose my graveyard. So Thumb's Cower is a way to rebuild if something like that happens. So I'll keep Thumb's Cower on top. On the other hand, if my opponent finds Trapping Charm, we will probably win the game. Okay, Oswald's Pride. And Plage. Alright. So my opponent is back to 6 and 7. I mean, actually 6, but 1 extra creature. We can kill Oswald's Pride easily here. We cannot kill my opponent yet. So let's decide here. If I just dredge 5 trying to hit Creeping Chill, I can kill my opponent. And if I didn't find my Creeping Chill, I can cast a Conflagrate to kill my opponent's creatures and deal some damage to them. Yeah, let's dredge 5. My opponent is virtually on 4, attacking with Narcomoeba 3. So let's try to kill my opponent, guys, before they can have they can gain some life. Okay, let's attack with Narcomoeba first, right? Grabbing more information before casting my Conflagrate. So let's attack with this Narcomoeba. Hits. My opponent is down to 5. And now I'll cast pre-lethal Conflagrate, targeting my opponent's head. And we'll discard 3 cards. My opponent is down to 2. As Amalgam enters the battlefield, my opponent needs to gain life at instant speed. Hey, they can't. Okay, we won our first match. Let's go to our second one. If you're enjoying my content and want to support me as a content creator, the best way of doing it is on Patreon. Being there, you can read my weekly articles and also my sideboard guides to play this and other dredge decks in other formats. I want to say thank you to all my patrons that you can see here on this page. Now, back to the games. Round 2, we are on the play against Sevreous. Another Giganta deck. We don't have lands, so let's mulligan. No lands again. We'll mulligan again. No lands again. Come on, deck. We are on the play. Mulligan. Okay, now we have lands. This hand has a plan. This hand definitely has a plan. It's a slow plan, but it is a plan. And this is what I was talking about. This is a Giganta deck, but we will never have access to black mana here. Unless this Otherworldly Gaze finds us a mana, since we are on the play. So maybe. Let's keep this, putting back both Dredgers. And do I keep 2 Otherworldly Gazes instead of 1 Otherworldly Gaze and 1 Thumb's Cower? I don't think so. I think Thumb's Cower on turn 1 is still better than Otherworldly Gaze, since we have Cephalid Coliseum. Oh, my opponent started with a Gemstone Caverns on the draw. That's scary. And my opponent kept 5 cards to do that. They did exile Manamorphose. So this is a Giganta deck, but maybe with a Storm build? What? Okay, so let's try to be fast as well. I'll grab here Steam Vents, paying 2 life, ouch, and Thumb Scour targeting me. Okay, Narcomoeba and 2 Narcomoebas and 1 Press Amalgam. Unfortunately, no Dredgers, but we can hit my opponent to dealing 5 damage each turn, starting now. And now we pass the turn. We have EvoD Gaze on our upkeep. My opponent has a Sacred Foundry and a turn 1 Reckless Impulse. Only rituals here, so my opponent has mana. Let's see if they can find something to do with all that mana. We'll cast EvoD Gaze on our upkeep. Do I keep the land? Do I keep EvoD Gaze? We have an Ox there, but I'm not sure if we have time to slowly grabbing lands to cast Ox 2 turns from now. I think I will keep only EvoD Gaze here. Maybe we can find a land after this EvoD Gaze. And I'll play my Cephalid Coliseum and cast my EvoD Gaze. We have many good hits, okay? We even have a Cathartic Reunion on top. So Wander and Dark Blast to our graveyard. Cathartic Reunion is not good at this point because it needs cards in your hand to be discarded. If I keep this card now that I am Hellbent, it will do no good. So now we unfortunately cannot keep this. It is no good at this position. But we'll deal 5 damage to my opponent, down to 13. And next turn we can crack Cephalid Coliseum. Luckily, because we have only Dark Blast as our Dredger. Let's see if we can find other Dredger to chain Dredgers. My opponent is casting Rituals, so that's scary. Oh, it's Raw. So this is a Storm deck. My opponent has another Pyretic Ritual, and Raw lost the flip. And now they have Giganta in their hand, only that. So you're telling me there's a chance. We'll Dredge 3. Okay, Creeping Chill is great here. We don't have other Dredgers and we don't have ways to cast this Dark Blast. So we have 2 options here. I can cast Otherworldly Gaze, or I can crack Cephalid Coliseum at instant speed. If I cast Otherworldly Gaze, I will lose 1 life. I will go down to 15, but then I will gain 3 life again. I think this is better because Dark Blast is only a Dredge 3. I think I will boldly casting Otherworldly Gaze now. Maybe you can hit other cards. Okay, we have only lands there. Not what we wanted to see here. And our red mana is again a tapped mana. We could keep a Cephalid Coliseum. I think this is better. I don't like to keep Thumb Scour here. It's just too slow because we cast a Thumb Scour, but we cannot do anything else on the same turn. And if I keep Cephalid Coliseum, I have the chance to crack it and having something extra to do. Other option would be keeping both. Thundering Falls will. This is my draw step, so I'm deciding what to do on my next turn. Thundering Falls will always be in my graveyard. I don't want tapped lands now. And I could keep both here. I will always keep Cephalid Coliseum. I'm not sure if I want to keep Thumb Scour. Maybe it's better than my other choices, right? So let's keep Thumb Scour and Cephalid Coliseum on top. I would like to drain 3, thank you. And now we'll attack. My opponent is down to 4, so they need to win this turn or kill our creatures. My opponent has a Surveil land, and that's it. It wasn't the best. Okay, it's our turn. It wasn't the best. Okay, my opponent concedes. It wasn't the best configuration. My opponent is trying to do something like a Turbo Storm build, but they had Raw and nothing else. Only Reckless Impulse, but it didn't pay off. So Damp Sphere is N. To kill a Raw, Dark Blast is nothing. In my last build, I had ways to kill Raw. This time, only a Conflagrate, a lucky Conflagrate on turn 2 would kill Raw. So Damp Sphere is really important. The Line of Sanctity seems good, but my opponent has good targets in their sideboard to get rid of this card with a single wish. And since they have Past of Flames, this card will only... we could include Line of Sanctity, but I would never mulligan until I hit a Line of Sanctity. It would be just a way to dilute our deck and maybe has a 1-turn advantage against my opponent. Wonder is not important. Against this deck, I don't think I want to take threats from my deck. I want every one of them because we don't have... Maybe Conflagrate is not needed, but a single one maybe it's a good way to finish games. So I think I will take... I don't want to take Dredgers as well. Thumb Scour is a way to be fast. Okay, let's take 1 Go and 1 Conflagrate and 1 Wonder. This is just a single Conflagrate. I think it's okay. We could do some 3 or 4 damage to my opponent, but yeah, I think this is the best we can do. Considering our sideboard, I think this is okay. Please Damping Sphere on our starting hand. With the turn 1 play, that would be amazing. Turn 1 Thumb Scour, turn 2 Damping Sphere, turn 3 Cathartic Reunion. No, this is a mulligan in every world. So let's mulligan. I don't like that. My opponent is also going to 5. This is too slow, and we have 1 Creeping Chill, 1 Akomui, but no, let's mulligan. Okay, this is definitely our best hand. We have a turn 1, a turn 2, and a turn 3. This is exactly what we want. So far so good, guys. We have our tools to win this game. Of course, my opponent maybe has something to bounce the Damping Sphere and win the game in the same turn. Hopefully they don't. We will keep this, putting Cephalid Coliseum and a Ghoul back to our deck. We could keep both Cephalid Coliseums instead of Catholic Reunion here. We could. But probably this Catholic Reunion, at some point we will find what we need. Probably. These other Eldrazi too. So my opponent kept 5 cards. Basic Mounting and pass. We like that. No Surveil. Another Damping Sphere. Okay, so let's start with Steam Vents here. Untapped. And I can cast other Eldrazi now. Okay. Do I keep Blood Crypt? This doubles up to cast an Ox in the future. And since we have double Damping Sphere, maybe we'll have the time to do that. I'll keep this on top. Now we already have our Dredger there. Next turn will be a Damping Sphere anyways, so we don't need to have Threshold for Cephalid Coliseum. And maybe on turn 3 I will also play Damping Sphere. Because it is a cumulative effect, right? This will force my opponent to pay 2 extra mana to cast more spells in the same turn. Okay. Oh, they will go for it now? Okay, they just want to roll and something else. Okay, they are trying to go on turn 2. But they have only 1 extra card in their hand. They want to flip Raw maybe? Not yet. Rinse, Resolve. Come on, guys. I have the perfect hand against this deck. And my opponent is trying to win on turn 2 after a mulligan to 5. They flipped Raw, but they have only lands there. And they pass the turn. Beautiful. They have nothing, only lands and a single Raw. Raw can deal damage. And that's it so far. But we need to hit this Raw somehow, right? Okay, we need to hit this Raw somehow because not this turn, but in the other turn, my opponent can... Okay, after my opponent fizzles here, I'm not sure if I should cast Damping Sphere. Because the -8 from Raw let my opponent cast instant and sorcery speed spells without paying their mana cost. But my opponent will have 3 or 4 lands, so they can pay for Damping Sphere. I think, guys, I will ignore my previous plan completely here. And I will dredge. Yeah, since this is what's happening. I think we need to have some creature to... Of course, my opponent can just top deck something to win with Raw. But we don't have haste creatures to... Yeah, I should decide here what to do. Just casting a Damping Sphere now, and my opponent just pluses Raw and passes back, and then I'll cast something, but I will not have hasty creatures to win the game. So I think I'll keep 1 Damping Sphere in my hand, and I'll try to be more aggressive here, trying to hit a creature to attack Raw next turn. So we dredge 5, we dredge 5 again, and no creatures yet, we dredge 4, 1 Arco and 1 Press Amalgam. That's everything we need. Next turn I cast Damping Sphere. Let's see if this was the right choice. Of course, my opponent can just top deck something good now and win the game anyways. They play one of their lands, Grixis for a Surveil land. We like that. They kept the card on top. They plus Raw. They had a Desperate Ritual just to put Jegantha into their hand. Okay, so we did the right thing. We will dredge here, dredge 4, 2 Press Amalgams, but maybe the next turn they will be good. We will attack Raw here. We don't want to give free spells to my opponent. Down to 4 loyalty, and now I will play Damping Sphere. Now let's see if my opponent can win the match because they have a Raw. Raw can plus here, plus 1 here. Let's see if they can win even against the Damping Sphere. We are on a healthy 19 life. My opponent pluses Raw and casts a Manamorphose, draws a card, 2 red mana, plays Ruby Medallion. That's good news. Fortunately, you cannot kill Raw this turn. Now we will dredge 4. Creeping Chill is good. Now I'm thinking about going for Raw or not. Do we need to go for Raw? Because we cannot kill Raw anyways. So let's crack Cephalid Coliseum before, just to decide what to do. We'll dredge 4, we'll dredge 3, dredge 5, we have a Ghoul there. Let's discard, it doesn't matter too much, let's discard some Dredgers. And now let's calculate here. We cannot do anything against Raw. My opponent can plus Raw here, or can deal 2 damage and maybe draw a card, and they cannot draw a card because they will not have another blue permanent. My opponent is down to 9. If we attack our opponent, they will go down to 5. And next turn we'll have 1 Prize Amalgam, 1 Ghoul, 3 Prize Amalgams. We have much more than lethal. We don't even need to attack my opponent here. We don't need because we have more than lethal for next turn, even without this attack. So I think I will attack Raw anyways, because we will have more than lethal even without attacking my opponent in this turn. Yeah, my opponent concedes. We won against a bad match. We were kind of lucky with a good hand and Damping Sphere. My opponent had a fast start with Raw. And I think I probably took the right route there, attacking Raw with some speed instead of just damping my Damping Sphere. Let's try to continue this on our next match. Round 3, we are paired against babao 94, or maybe babão. Babão is a word in Portuguese. Okay, so this is not, it's a mulligan. Okay, if my opponent were playing in a Giganta deck, maybe I would be tempted to keep this hand, only because I have Dark Blast, but no, this is a mulligan. This is our best hand so far. We need red mana to make this hand functional, but I'll keep it. I'll put Ghoul and Ox back, and we are on the draw. Maybe we top deck a land. Oh, my opponent has Leyline of the Guild Pact. So, no Giganta, but they have Leyline. So, interesting. Crit Wraith. And Breeding Pool. Tapped. This is maybe a build that I'm not familiar with. We draw land, and we draw a land. Fetch land? No, Thumb Scour. We could go for a Thumb Scour turn 1, cracking Cephalid Coliseum on turn 2, and then casting Otherworldly Gaze on turn 3. Let's try to do that. That Street Wraith is giving me some bad feeling. Okay, we have Dredgers now, we have Wonder. Yeah, and if we did cast Otherworldly Gaze, we would not find a land, so it was better this way. Thumb Scour was a better play. Now is my opponent's turn. Oh, nothing more? Okay. So now I would definitely dredge and crack Cephalid Coliseum, since my opponent doesn't have anything. So let's crack Cephalid Coliseum here, and in the future we can grab another land with Otherworldly Gaze. We'll dredge 4, we'll dredge 3, and that's it. No Narcos, no Creeping Chills. Okay, let's discard 3 dredgers. We unfortunately did draw an Narcomoeba. Now we pass the turn. My opponent did find their second land, and they play a Scion of Draco. Okay, can we deal with it? I think we'll dredge and then cast Otherworldly Gaze, right? It's the best thing to do here. Let's dredge 4. Okay, Thumb Scour. We could hit Creeping Chill here, or Narcomoeba, or both. Narcomoeba is solid, and we have a Blood Crypt for next turn. So I will keep it. Next turn we can cast Cathartic Reunion. Let's hope for no counter spells from my opponent. That's unfortunately too slow, because we have only a Pressed Amalgam there. I pass the turn. Opponent taps for, okay, just cycling a Troll for an Undercity Sewers. Yeah, this is a different build. Maybe this is my first time playing against this specific build. It leans towards black. Okay, I will not block. My opponent stayed. Okay, we don't have a choice here. I will draw my Blood Crypt, and I will try to resolve Cathartic Reunion. Even if my opponent has a counterspell, I can cast Otherworldly Gaze with Flashback in the future. Okay, no counterspells. And we don't have Stink Redeems yet, so we dredge 4. Now we dredge 5. And dredge 4 again. Okay, now we'll have more creatures at the end of this turn. Yes, yes, yes. But it will not be easy to deal with a Scion of Draco with Leyline, even with all of our army here. My opponent cracks Flooded Strand for a Surveil land. Okay, Overgrown Tomb in my opponent's graveyard. They don't want more lands. It seems that we are favored to win this game, but if my opponent can deploy more lifelink creatures, this is not easy. We can kill Ragavan, but I'm not seeing red here. I'm not sure if my opponent plays many red creatures. They play Godless Shrine, tapped. Okay, a Cascade creature for Living End. Okay, so this is a mashup. Yeah, I was feeling that something was weird. This is a mashup between Living End and Zoo. So now what? Let's see. We still have some Narcomoeba in our deck. 1, it's in your hand. We have 2 in our graveyard. We still have 1 Narcomoeba in our deck. How many Creeping Chills we have in our deck? 2. So it is still important to dredge here. Unfortunately, we only have dredge 3 now. So dredge 3. Okay, 1 Creeping Chill. The good aspect of this board is that my opponent's creatures are not that good. I was more afraid of Scion of Draco instead of those creatures. This Street Wraith has Swamp Walk, and we have a swamp. So let's pay attention to that. My opponent's Troll of Khazad-dûm needs to be blocked by 3 or more creatures. If my Golgari Thug dies, I can put an Narcomoeba on top of my deck. I can give a -1/-1 to 1 creature. Or I can cast Otherworldly Gaze. I cannot cast Conflagrate, I cannot crack Cephalid Coliseum, my mana base will not allow that. At the end of this turn we will have 3 Ghouls, and at the end of the other turn we will have 2 Amalgams. 2 Amalgams is not that much. 6, 9, 10, 11. We are not dead here. So I don't think I need to be defensive trying to... I can even attack my opponent with my flying creature. But I want that Wonder in my graveyard. I think, guys, I think the right call here is just casting Otherworldly Gaze with Flashback. My opponent has 3 cards in their hand. Okay, another Creeping Chill is great. I would like to see another land. I'm not sure if we still have a land. Well, we probably do. But another Creeping Chill is actually good. So now we are above 16, 17 life. Do I attack with Wonder here? We cannot block Street Wraith or Throw anyways. And if I keep Wonder as a blocker, my opponent will probably not attack with Shardless Agent. So I think I will attack with Wonder. Let's put my opponent down to 11. Being aggressive against Living End. Living End Zoo. I don't want to see another Sign of Draco from my opponent's hand. Luckily they don't have Sign of Draco now. Because if they do, we will lose on the spot. I'll press F6 here, I have nothing. I don't need to bluff anything, my opponent can see how my deck is. Okay, now my opponent attacks me with Shardless Agent. I think I'll block here. Because we already have lethal, right? So my opponent needs to do something extra to win here. If I don't block, my opponent maybe has another Living End. And it would be good to kill my own Wonder to give flying to my creatures, but we cannot do that. We have only 1 black mana for Dark Blast. We don't have ways to cast a Conflagrate here. I think I will block Shardless Agent here. And then I'll put an Amoeba on top. We have lethal on board. My opponent needs to do something. I don't see red mana. Of course, my opponent has lands from every type, right? Because of the line. But it seems like a 4-color build. Maybe my opponent has red mana in their build, but I'm not seeing red cards. So I'm not afraid of Lightning Bolt, at least not immediately. They can have Tribal Flames, but I'm not seeing that. Let's see. My opponent has another Cascade spell. Yeah, so I was correct. My opponent will find another Living End. But this time we will have many other creatures in play. My opponent has their Sign of Draco, and we have more creatures. Now what? If I attack here, my opponent will go 15, but then 3, 4, 5, 6, down to 9. Not impressive. We don't have an island, so actually our Wonder will not give flying to our creatures. Now that I was thinking about my last build here on the channel, because all of my lands besides Cephalid Coliseum are islands, but now we have a Blood Crypt. So this is different. This is different. I want to dredge because I have an Amoeba on top. We don't have Creeping Chills anymore. So this is something about this build. Silversmote Ghouls will never come back now because all of our Creeping Chills were used. Let's check how many lands we still have in our deck. Because I can cast Otherworldly Gaze and then decide. From our 4 Steam Vents, 1, 2, 3, we still have 1 Steam Vent in our deck. If I dredge, I can risk dredge my last Steam Vents. So I'll cast Otherworldly Gaze now on my okay, we don't have our Steam Vents, but we have another Nako and another Press Amalgam, that's okay. The only thing I want to draw here is Steam Vents. I don't have Ghouls or Creeping Chills or even Amoeba to worry about, so let's have a natural draw. Some Scour, alright. I will still attack, right? If my opponent blocks a Press Amalgam, it will come back because we have another Press Amalgam coming back after this turn. My opponent has an enchantment with Exalted. So actually I'm only putting my opponent down to 10 because they will gain 5 life next turn, attacking with a Sign of Draco. It's not easy here, guys. One thing that we can do next turn is holding Dark Blast to put a Sign of Draco with 1 less power for a single turn. My opponent plays another land. Yeah, it feels like my opponent noticed that Sign of Draco could win this game by itself, and that casting that first Living End was a mistake. I will not block here because I'm not seeing red, and my opponent has Trample, so it doesn't matter too much to block Sign of Draco or not. Now I still have a natural draw. Okay, Ox. We cannot tap anything here. We don't have Creeping Chills anymore. We cannot win, guys. We cannot win this game. If our creatures have flying, but we don't have islands. That was my expectation here, to have Steam Vents on top, and then everything flies and we can block Sign of Draco. But now we cannot. I'll cast another Otherworldly Gaze on my way out. Down to 1. Opponent has 3 cards. Yeah, there is our Steam Vents. But unfortunately, we cannot block Sign of Draco with Trample, so we are dead. Let's try to do better on game 2. The only way to bounce permanents in this sideboard is Echoing Truth. Silent Gravestone is not good against Living End. Leyline of the Void would be better on this case. More Conflagrates are not impressive here. Maybe my opponent has Endurance. Maybe. But I'll not include the Leyline of Sanctity against this deck. And Damping Sphere is not good. So our only answer for a Leyline is Echoing Truth. Maybe my opponent will not keep hands with Leyline. So we are not well prepared to fight a Living End, I think. Wonder is good. Not especially good, but it is good. Maybe on the play I do nothing differently. I just try to win fast. Because we have only 2 copies of Echoing Truth. I will not mulligan until we find Echoing Truth. It is only... I don't like to have bounce spells, only 2 bounce spells in the sideboard because of situations like this. Echoing Truth is a card that you really want or you never want, right? Not a card that, well, since I have in my starting hand, that's a good addition. So I think on the play I will not include anything. Let's just submit the deck back. Okay, we have a turn 1, medium turn 2, Creeping Champ is our starting hand. Let's mulligan this. This is not good. My opponent kept 7, so let's mulligan this. No lands, let's go to 4. Okay, it is what it is. So we'll put Dredger, Ox, and go back. Done. My opponent has Leyline. And we have Otherworldly Gaze, so let's cast it. I crack this for a Steam Vent. Now we have an island. And Otherworldly Gaze, please, do your job. Okay, we have Cephalid Coliseum on top, and that's good. I will pass the turn. My opponent plays Flooded Strand, and that's it. Alright, we like that. I will draw Cephalid Coliseum, and I will cast my Otherworldly Gaze with Flashback. Okay, do I keep my other land? I think I do keep my other land. Okay, now we have 3 creatures in our graveyard. Maybe my opponent starts cycling some creatures. They crack Flooded Strand, probably for a Surveil land. Yeah, Lush Portico is here. They don't want another Leyline. They play Basic Island and Scion of Draco. Now we draw our extra land, and I think hopefully my opponent will not have Endurance. That would be an extraordinary hand. I think now I can grab Blood Crypt because I already have blue mana for what I need. So no, actually I want to cast Otherworldly Gaze and crack Cephalid Coliseum on next turn. I cannot take my Blood Crypt, unfortunately. Okay, so let's grab Steam Vents. Untapped. I will cast Otherworldly Gaze. Conflagrate is good. And this is the difference between a Life from the Loam build and Grixis build. Conflagrate is good, but is especially good to deal with small creatures. I remember playing my last league here on the channel. Sometimes I had a Conflagrate to 8, for example, easily, without needing to work to have it. We don't want Polluted Delta. We have 1 Dredger, 2, 3 Dredgers. So please, Cephalid Coliseum, be good to us. This was a mulligan to 4, but we are doing here. My opponent pressed F6, so we have a chance. Dredge 5, and Dredge 5, 3 Creeping Chills, whoa, and 1 Amoeba, great. Let's discard Press Amalgam, Stink with Imp. And now we'll have many creatures. Maybe my opponent will be scared, and maybe they play a Living End again. Maybe, just maybe. Okay, we have a Ghoul, a Press Amalgam. No, we don't have that many creatures actually. My opponent doesn't have creatures in their graveyard yet. They play a Basic Plains. Oh, they are going for it. Why? This is no good here. My opponent doesn't have creatures in their... Oh, okay, they decided to not cast a Living End. They did that only for the Exalted trigger. Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll not block. Interesting and unexpected. This is my first time seeing this play. Interesting. So they played this just for the enchantment with Exalted. We will Dredge 5 here. Ox would be amazing. No Ox. Narcomoeba is also good. I should probably cast Otherworldly Gaze in response to Narcomoeba's trigger here. But I'm still considering my options here about attacking or not. If I attack here, my opponent will probably... Yeah, any attacks here are not that great. So yeah, this was a punt. Let's see if it will be a bad punt or only... Yeah, it will be a bad punt. I'm sorry, guys. But I'll keep Press Amalgam on top. I'll keep Cathartic Union on top. Because my opponent has blue, but we didn't see counter spells on game 1. Yeah, we should have more creatures by now. This was a mistake. My opponent plays a Breeding Pool. Untapped. So they want 4 mana. What do they have? Oh, they have Leyline of the Void. Okay. We will not attack. That's also interesting. The only way to deal with Leyline of the Void in our sideboard is 2 copies of Echoing Truth. I'm not judging. Recently I played with 0 answers to Leyline of the Void in my sideboard because Leyline of the Void is absent from the modern metagame. But this is a statement against 2 bounce spells in your sideboard. We probably need more than that, or maybe other cards like Pick Your Poison. So actually no, because this is a Grixis build. I cannot play Picker Poison. To deal with enchantments, we need bounce spells. And you see here, we cannot cast Conflagrate targeting Scion of Draco because it has hexproof. So we can concede with grace, gracefully, and get out of here. Okay, we lost this round. Let's go to our round 4. This is round 4. We are against TJmagicJT. And this is a weird hand. I don't like to have double Narcomoeba in our starting hand. We have a turn 2 Catholic Reunion, which is good. So maybe this is just a keep. This is bad if my opponent has discard spells. We are on the draw. I think this is a borderline keep. I will keep this. I don't like it. I'm not happy with it, but I think it is a keep. We cannot say no to hands with 2 lands, Catholic and Dredger. Okay, my opponent is on Eldrazi probably. Basic Forest and Ancient Stirrings. Yugin's Labyrinth is there. Okay, we will draw Dark Blast. So let's play Polluted Delta and pass. My opponent draws. They play Yugin's Labyrinth with Breaker of Creation. So 3 mana for our opponent. And they have the Rumble. What else they have this turn? Emrakul, Talisman. Okay, they decided for Emrakul. So I think I will cast Dark Blast targeting this Eldrazi spawn token here. There's 1 less mana to delay my opponent's Emrakul. And then we will have a Dredger this turn. I was thinking about grabbing my Surveillance. But since my opponent gave me a target, it is just better. So we start dredging on turn 1. On turn 2, I mean. Now, we'll dredge 3, Creeping Chill and Dark Blast and Otherworldly Gaze. I will grab a Steam Vents here. So now we can cast Ox in this game. And because of that, I think I will discard Ox and Golgari Thug instead of discarding both Dredgers. We already have a Dark Blast there. Let's try to cast an Ox next turn. We'll dredge 4, we'll dredge 3, and we'll dredge 4. It paid off. Now we have a Ghoul there and a Conflagrate. So we pass the turn. Ghoul enters the battlefield. No Press Amalgams yet. But we have Wonder, so our creatures will fly above my opponent's Eldrazi. They play Eldrazi Temple, so they have access to 5 mana this turn. They have 3 card types in their graveyard, so they still need 5 mana to cast an Emrakul. Oh, they have Kozilek's Command. So now we don't have a Dredger and Ox anymore. I can cast Otherworldly Gaze or I can cast a Dark Blast here. And I think the answer is Dark Blast again. And now we'll dredge 3. Okay, we had a Cephalid Coliseum on top, but if we grab it, we cannot crack it because we would have no mana and we would have no place and no dredgers. So let's attack with our Go. It flies. Fly me to the moon. Can you imagine a zombie vampire flying to hit Emrakul? My opponent has more mana now. What is that? The Michael spawn. So they will exile 1 of our lands, the black one. Smart play. And now my opponent has access to Emrakul next turn, guys. So we will not win this. And after casting Emrakul, my opponent will grab another card with a Sanctum of Ugin. So let's concede here. And now it's time to test Silent Gravestone, this Ixalan's card. And I believe that's it. So we have 4 copies of Silent Gravestone to include. We can take 1 Go from the deck. Wonder is good, not especially good, but it is good. Let's see what else we wanted to take. I don't want to take maybe 1 Tom Scour, but I don't want to take more than one from our turn 1 enablers here. I don't want to take 1 Dredger because we have only 11. Conflagrate is interesting against as a finisher, but again, this is not a Life from Below deck, so Conflagrate is not especially good. This is something to think about since we have 2 extra copies of Conflagrate in our sideboard. So I can see this being included against energy decks and small creature decks, but not against Eldrazi. So maybe we can take a Conflagrate from our deck here. And we need to take 1 more card. We have only 3 copies of Narcomoeba. Oh, and I forgot about this when I was explaining on the intro here on the deck tech. Having 3 copies of Narcomoeba probably relies on the fact that we have 2 copies of Ox, and Ox can enter the battlefield and also activate Press Amalgams and etc. My opponent prefers to have 3 copies of Silversmote Ghouls instead of Narcomoeba. 4 copies of this instead of 4 copies of Narcomoeba. I think I still want Wander. I don't want to take Ox from the deck. Okay, let's take 2 Tom Scour and submit. Silent Gravestone is a great card against this deck. So if we have in our starting hand with mana and ways to go after more mana, like this hand, I was talking about the hand and it came to us. So this is a game. We don't have basic lands in this build, so it's important to have more lands. I will grab, I think I'll guarantee my red here instead of going for a Blood Crypt, right? My blue, I mean. We have 2 blue mana spells in our hand. Let's start with Silent Gravestone. My opponent has a commercial district. And now, luckily, this other gaze will find us good stuff to put into our graveyard, but also our second land. Yeah, exactly what we wanted. So Bloodstained Mire here. We'll grab it. I'll crack it. And Steam Vents is here. So we can cast our Thumbscour. And Creeping Chill and 1 Ghoul. So we are slightly ahead. Let's see what my opponent can do on turn 2. They kept 7 cards. Yugin's Labyrinth. We want an Ox for next turn. Just a Talisman. Okay. And Utopia's Pro. So my opponent is ramping. They have an Emrakul there. Oh, there's more. The Rumble. Ooh, scary cards. They chose Eldrazi Temple. And now, the Dredge. No Ox. Akumeba enters the battlefield. Oh, again, I was just thinking about other things here and forgot to cast Otherworldly Gaze, but let's do it immediately. It's okay. Now we have Wander. We have other land. Do we want other land? Not sure, because my opponent can have... I think playing this specific list here, we must hope for the best about the land situation. Because my opponent can have ways to exile my land. They even... I saw a World Breaker in my opponent's graveyard. I think we are just digging for Ox here and hoping that my opponent don't have ways to exile our lands. So let's put everything into our graveyard. And now our creatures fly. Let's attack with Ghoul. And we cannot wait too much. That's why I'm not keeping lands on top of my deck, because my opponent will have an Emrakul really soon in this, maybe next turn. 4, 5, 6 mana. Maybe this is... Yeah, my opponent can exile my land, unfortunately. And keeping another land on top wouldn't be the way to win this game. My opponent has Bojuka Bog, so they can exile my graveyard anyways. So this seems hopeless. We draw a Creeping Chill. My opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Plus 3 card types, 9 with this Eldrazi Spell token. My opponent only needs 1 mana to cast Emrakul. Of course, they need to tap this, but now our creatures doesn't fly anymore. Cannot fly anymore. Only Narcomoeba, of course. Let's attack here. But I think we lost this battle. Opponent has another Eldrazi Temple. We could include Damping Sphere against this opponent, but 4 Gravestone and 3 Damping Sphere, it's just too defensive because my opponent can still just grab a Bojuka Bog again. Yeah, and now my opponent has Emrakul. Let's concede. GG, we tried, but this was super hard. My opponent had great hands, both games. Final match against EvoD, and we are on the play. Okay, we have a good turn 1 and turn 2 and turn 3 sequence. So this is a keep. My opponent has this their first mulligan to 6 to 5. Okay, my opponent got 5 cards. This is no Giganta deck, so we can grab our Steam Vents here. We could, since we don't need double blue for anything, I could grab a Blood Crypt to guarantee black mana here instead of Steam Vents, because now we don't have the need, at least not now, to have double blue or anything. So let's grab Blood Crypt instead. Let's guarantee our black mana. It is not a Giganta deck, but it can be a creature deck. And oh, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, guys. This could be a tapped mana, but this needed to be a blue mana. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm tired. And this was a misplay. My opponent has a Stomping Ground. Tapped. This was actually embarrassing because I had a good sequence in my head, but then I just had an overthinking moment here, just thinking, okay, let's guarantee our Blood Crypt, but this doesn't matter because and now I have a Creeping Chill in our hand. Perfect. Okay, let's play better. I'll grab our Steam Vents now. Yep. And I'll cast my Cathartic Reunion, discarding 2 Dredgers, and we'll Dredge 4, Dredge 4, Dredge 5. Okay, so nothing bad here. Considering our options, and my misplay, we are actually good to win this game next turn because we have an Ox of Agonas. My opponent has... Oh, okay, a Prowess deck. My opponent had a mulligan to 5, so maybe they couldn't find mana, because it's hard to see a Prowess deck going that low on cards. So Dredge 5, and now I will just cast Ox. This is my best play here, right? So we can exile some lands. We don't have ways to grab lands anyways. So let's exile lands and sorceries. Ox enters the battlefield now. Triggering Prized Amalgam. And now we'll Dredge 5 and 5. We have another Ox for next turn. And 5 again. Maybe a Creeping Chill? No. But that's okay. And our creatures now fly. Let's see if my opponent wants to cast another lightning bolt targeting our Ox. My opponent plays a Monastery Swift Spear and a Mishra's Bubble. Only 2 cards in their hand. I don't think my opponent can win this turn. They are cracking Mishra's Bubble looking to our top card, but we will dredge, so this is not important. And I will definitely block here. Let's block you. You are the best creature. Okay, my opponent will cast Mutagenic Growth to kill my Ox. That's okay. And now we can cast Ox again. We will dredge. This is a case we cannot kill 1/2 creatures, so we dredge 4. Creeping Chill is great because we have 4 ghouls in our graveyard, so everyone is coming to the party. Nakomiba enters the battlefield too. Creeping Chill is great, and we will cast Ox, and we will exile some cards there. We have only 13 cards in our deck, so let's see what we are still looking for. Creeping Chill, 1, 2, 3. We still have 1 chill. So let's do small dredging here. Just Dark Blast. Dark Blast. Okay, we did find our last Creeping Chill and press Amalgam. I don't want to dredge 4 here. Let's cancel. I think we already have what we need. Oh, Cephalid Coliseum is a great card. We can play it, not that we need it. Maybe I keep Cephalid Coliseum since we have Conflagrate there. And now I will attack with my creatures. And we have more than lethal here. My opponent needs to deal 18 damage this turn, and we have 2 blockers. Okay, my opponent concedes. I believe this is my first time playing against this specific deck here with Mutagenic Growth. I played against a 1 Prowess deck, but it wasn't that build. My opponent, Leyline of Sanctity can be tempting here, but this is not exactly a burn deck. My opponent relies on creatures to win the game. So Conflagrate is good. I could include more Conflagrates. At the same time, my opponent's creatures can grow at instant speed sometimes. Damping Sphere, Silent Gravestone, maybe just 2 copies of Echoing Truth, maybe Conflagrate. Let's see, what is not that good against this opponent? Silversmote Ghoul enters the battlefield tapped. I think 1 can easily be decided out. Wonder is not that special because my opponent's creatures are actually more aggressive than ours. So they, at the same time, they have some flying creatures, right? They can have some flying creatures. So let's keep Wonder. Dark Blast is not especially good, but I will not take Dredgers from my deck. 1-time Scour maybe, but we need to be fast here. 1-time Scour is okay. I cannot take Creeping Chill, of course. Maybe this. 2 copies of Echoing Truth, especially because we are on the draw. I'm not sure if Conflagrate is especially good against this deck. Let's keep this this way. We could include 1 extra copy of Conflagrate instead of maybe Ox, but Ox is so good. Okay, let's try 1 extra Conflagrate here. Not sure if we had the time. Now the time stopped. 7 cards in hand for my opponent. This is not the best keep. We can cast creatures as blockers, but that's all. Let's mulligan. Okay, this is a keep. Let's put 1 goal back. Done. My opponent plays a mountain and Monastery Swift Spear. And we are losing. Let's not commit misplays now, right? Especially because Creeping Chill in our hand. Great. Especially because now I know that we don't especially want, black. We don't need to go after black. Okay, so we can put everything into our graveyard. Those are great hits. And then we will cast Cathartic Reunion on turn 2 and crack Cephalid Coliseum on turn 3. Unfortunately, we will not have Ox this game unless my opponent do something weird. Barbarian Ring for my opponent and Mishra's Bubble. And my opponent kept 7, so if they play Mishra's Bubble now, it's because they don't have another haste creature this turn. They could wait to draw this card. Lava Dart. Okay, my opponent's going for it. My opponent's trying to maximize damage here. Now we'll dredge 5. We have an Ox of Agonas. Unfortunately, we cannot cast it. Let's go with a Cathartic Reunion instead. I'll discard Ghoul and Imp, the cards that can have some utility. We'll dredge 5, we dredge 5, and we will dredge 4. Okay, great hits. We have 2 goals there. No Press Amalgams yet, but Nakomibas are great blockers. And my opponent is down to 14 now, and we are up to 17 life. It's important to stay above 15, because Prowess deck, especially if they have 2 or 3 creatures in play, they can kill you from out of nowhere. So my opponent casts another Mishra's Bubble. If they attack, I will just block with a single Nakomiba as a jump blocker. And they attack, and let's block with 1. My opponent passes. Alright. We have only dredged 3 in our graveyard. Now we have more dredgers. Let's crack Cephalid Coliseum before attacking to see what we have here. Dredge, okay, now we have Press Amalgam, Creeping Chill, and Golgari Thug dredge 4. Okay, we have 1 extra ghoul there. It will trigger Amalgams. We can discard some dredgers. Doesn't matter, we cannot cast anything more this game. Now our creatures can fly. We don't need to rush things here because my opponent has 4 cards in their hand. I still think my opponent can win if they have some good combination of cards there. So I think I'll attack only with my ghouls here. Let's keep 2 Necromibas on defense. My opponent is down to 5, we have an extra ghoul, and next turn 2 extra amalgams. Let's see if my opponent can deal 20 damage. They need trample, they need several creatures, I don't think they have it. Oh, they have Thermod Script now. Okay, so the Learning of Sanctity actually could be good. But it is a little too late. It's weird to have those card combinations now, because my opponent could play Dragon's Rage Channeler at least the last turn. So I'm not sure. My opponent's attacking me dealing 2 damage. I don't think I need to block. I don't think I need to block. I think I'll take this hit, because we have lethal next turn. My opponent needs to deal with our creatures, and we have 5 creatures. The Channeler still cannot fly. My opponent is passing the turn and conceding the game. Whoa. Okay, guys, we won. And we won with a 3-2 result. Let's talk a little bit about how the deck did perform. We have 3 solid wins and 2 awful losses here. We won against a Giganta deck, and then against a Storm deck. Damping Sphere was pretty good, but we have 2 difficult losses in a row against Living End and against an Eldrazi deck, and then a solid win against Prowess. So what we learned about this challenge winner deck? Well, the deck obviously can do a great performance, especially when we manage to do a good sequence of plays on turn 1, and then on turn 2, and then on turn 3. I do believe this deck is a good way to approach the format, especially if you consider that it's not that hard to play. You mostly need 2 colors of mana and sometimes Blood Crypt to cast your Dark Blast, but you don't have many other black cards to cast. Of course, you could cast creatures in a pinch, but usually you don't need to cast any black spell, even Dark Blast. Sometimes you don't have access to Blood Crypt, and this is mostly an easy deck with Black Splash to Dark Blast. Let's think that way. So I do like Wonder, and since this deck has no green, it's easier to include Wonder in the main deck. Wonder is definitely good in a creature metagame like this one. And the numbers in the main deck are pretty similar to all of my other Dredge builds, so I think it just works. We had a situation this league where Silversmote Ghoul didn't work that well, because we just did hit every Creeping Chill too soon in the game, and then Silversmote Ghoul cannot come back. But of course, it is the best creature in this build, because this is not a low-end build, and you need to work with what you have in your starting hand. You cannot grab lands back from your graveyard, so Bloodghast are not good if you don't have Life from the Loam, or if you don't have at least 20 lands. So this is definitely the best choice for a Grixis deck. Silversmote Ghoul is excellent in this list. But we had that situation where our ghouls were dead, and we don't have ways to get ghouls back after your Creeping Chills were used. So this feels like probably a faster deck. It's not faster than our previous Grixis list here that I played here on the channel some months ago, that I played with Burning Inquiry as one of our turn 1 spells. But it is definitely faster than Sultai, faster than 4-color or 5-color Dredge. And I think this is a great starting point to approach the format if you want to play Grixis or even straight blue-red. As you probably noticed, especially on our first couple of rounds, having a Blood Crypt, a single black mana in your deck, is not that great if you need a later Dark Blast in your matches, or if you want to cast 2 Dark Blasts in the same turn, something that other builds can do. And other Grixis lists can do too, because they have other colors of mana. Some Grixis list or Sultai list or 4-color lists who have access to more than 1 single black mana. But this is definitely a choice. This deck is trying to win, and to win with flying colors against the energy decks that are everywhere, right? So against energy, having 3 copies of Dark Blast in your main deck and 1 copy of Conflagrate and 2 extra Conflagrates in your sideboard, this is probably the best configuration to... it could be better only if you have another black mana and a 4th Dark Blast in your main deck. Besides that, this is probably one of the best ways to deal with small creatures. And I do like the Wonder in the main deck here. But what I did like was Damping Sphere against Storm. This was my first time playing with this card. And maybe we could win that game without Damping Sphere, but it felt so safe to see Damping Sphere in my starting hand with a solid game plan. So I'm thinking about including this on my other Dredge decks in Modern as well. 3 copies seems accurate. Silent Gravestone will not win games against Eldrazi per se, because Eldrazi is so fast and they have other ways to deal with your graveyard. Thinking about my previous matches against Eldrazi with Sultai builds and 4-color builds, I never sideboard against Eldrazi, probably 0 or 1 or maybe 2 cards only. And I had solid wins against Eldrazi. I discovered that the best way to deal with Eldrazi decks was to just trying to put several threats at once in your graveyard, and if they can deal with 2 or 3, it's okay. But if you have 5, 6, or 7 threats at once in your graveyard, it is probably better. And the 4-color builds probably are slightly stronger against Eldrazi because we have more threats than this Grixis build. But I like that card, but you cannot just try to mulligan to 5, for example, trying to hit Silent Gravestone, thinking that this will win the games you need. And you cannot side in Silent Gravestone against everyone. Sometimes you think your opponent plays with Surgical Extraction, and actually they play with a Spell Bomb or other cards that hit you, not your cards. Line of Sanctity is good. We didn't have that many opportunities to play Line of Sanctity. Actually, in this specific league, I would like to have access to Leyline of the Void against Living End. So it's being harder and harder to have everything you need in your sideboard. We still have many Dredge players in Modern trying to include 2 or 3 copies of Gemstone Caverns trying to be faster against fast decks. But I don't see anymore. I cannot see reasons to do that anymore, because being fast is good, but sometimes you can have a faster hand and we will lose anyways because your opponent has what they need to fight your deck, and you need some answers. And maybe what I do like about this list is, even being Grixis and trying to be an all-in list, it doesn't play Gemstone Caverns, and I think at least I like the card, but I feel that Modern, after the latest bans, is being slowly transformed into a wider format with a wider metagame, and it's important to have more answers and not just trying to be fast when you're on the draw. I don't like 2 copies of Echoing Truth, and maybe 3 copies of Conflagrate are a little too much, because your deck already has good answers in the main deck. So maybe we could take 1 Conflagrate from the deck and both Echoing Truth to include 3 bounce spells like Into the Flute Maw. That is something that I would probably do if I repeat the same list here. But I do like Damping Sphere, and I will start to try this on my 4-color list here, especially in future videos here on the channel. And I think that's it. I hope you did enjoy this league with me trying this challenge winner. This list, guys, is pretty similar to the first list that many Dredge players tried to build after Modern Horizons 3, especially those who tried Grixis, just including a Cephalid Coliseum into a red build. And I think it does a good job. So if you're also trying lists like this one, similar to this one, let me know in the comments below how are you performing with your list, your personal favorite. Click the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I would love to hear the Modern community, since now I'm also a Modern player. See you soon.